Hi, I'm Rich Lord. I'm a projects reporter at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I've been doing journalism for 20 years, including about a dozen years here at the Post-Gazette. And I've done one prior Pulitzer Center on crisis reporting project, which was called The Handshake and the Fist. My family happens to be half Dutch, so I keep an eye on the Dutch-speaking world, including the little country of Suriname on the northern edge of South America. When I saw that Alcoa, a Pittsburgh-founded company with a long history here, had pulled out of Suriname, I decided to kind of keep an eye on it for a while. I started reaching out to some of the folks who had previously lived and worked in the company towns that Alcoa built and operated in Suriname. And what I ended up finding was something I really did not expect, a country that had been really shaped by a Pittsburgh company to suit its needs that now had to deal with the aftermath of that company's departure.
Hi, I'm Len Boselovic. I'm a business reporter for the Post-Gazette, where I've been since 1993. I cover metals, manufacturing, and financial markets for the paper. I've covered the aluminum industry since the early 1990s. As part of that, I covered Alcoa, formerly a Pittsburgh company, now moving back to Pittsburgh. I got a call from a representative of the Suriname government who let me know about what was happening in Suriname. I was already aware of it. This is not the only plant that Alcoa has shuttered in recent years, or that other aluminum companies have shuttered just because of global aluminum market conditions being very poor. But what intrigued me was it sounded like a repeat of what happened in Pittsburgh when the steel industry collapsed in the 1980s and 1990s. The economic upheaval there was the same that we felt here in Pittsburgh during those years.
Yeah, I was particularly interested to learn how Alcoa's presence in Suriname and then later its departure from Suriname affected the lives of some people I'd never heard of before, called the Sa'amaka. The Sa'amaka were descendants of slaves brought to South America from Africa by the Dutch back in colonial times. Their ancestors escaped from plantations and formed their own society in the jungle. They actually waged a 50-year war with the colonists, the Dutch colonists in Suriname, and eventually signed a peace treaty in 1762. Which essentially gave them autonomy in their jungle territory. 100 years later, Alcoa built a dam which flooded a good portion of that territory and sent roughly 6,000 Sa'amaka people from 43 villages fleeing. In fact, they had to be relocated to what were called transmigration villages. So a lot of what I was looking at in Suriname was the history and the fate of the Sa'amaka who were forced to move because of the dam that Alcoa built to power its industry there.
Alcoa played a very big role in the economy down there. You had a job with Alcoa, you were in, you were made. The revenues they generated for the government enabled a lot of Surinamese people to go to Holland or elsewhere for their college educations. The departure of Alcoa means not only are those aluminum jobs gone, all those other jobs that those jobs created are gone. Again, like what happened with the steel industry. Inflation is running at over 50%, over 10% unemployment, protests in the street on pretty much a weekly basis over all of this. And a lot of it stems from the upheaval from Alcoa departing.
I felt like it was my job to come in and show some of the people and some of the landscape that have been affected by a century of Alcoa in Suriname. My background doing long-term projects on the different steel valleys in the Pittsburgh area informed a lot of my work. I've been interested in the way that the pullout of the steel industry and of the glass industry and of the railroad industry has affected the area around Pittsburgh where we live and report. And a lot of those issues were mirrored in this country that before I did this project, honestly, I had never even heard of. To know that our town had such a huge effect on a country that most of the people in Pittsburgh could never even pick out on a map was an incredible duty. One of the things that I found really interesting and became a challenge for me as a photographer was the way that different groups of people understood what we were doing and also responded to having their photo made. Because there's a hesitancy to be completely open to outsiders because of the long colonial history and because of different closed societies that have been able to maintain their culture because they had a certain boundary between them and the outside world, we really depended a lot on our translator and our fixers to help explain what we were doing, where the project was going to go, to be upfront with what our intentions were as far as exploring this story, and that we wanted their stories and their opinion to help flesh it out and bring it to life and add pieces to it that brought humanity to all of these different moving pieces of legislation and business and things like that. And one of the challenges that I faced was having a very small amount of time to make those connections with people, to get into their lives and to photograph more.